Hey, it's Rob from Adulting. So, in part one of my video, I reviewed it and I was like, man, I missed a ton of stuff. How the heck did I not talk about that? And on top of that, I didn't mean to sound discouraging, but, it is what it is. So I wanted to touch base and, add a little bit to that and really encourage you to think about security as a career because there really are some really fantastic opportunities. So I think one of the first places, if you're thinking about a career in security, is education. Now, you don't need to go to school to be a guard, but what's really helpful is when you figure out there's more out there, not just here in the province of Ontario, here in Canada, but worldwide that relates to security. There are so many more opportunities, and you start learning a lot of that in school. Now, it depends who your teachers are. I find the people I've met, the people I've networked with, different schools in Ontario, and there's 3 or 4 that have security programs. I personally took protection, security, and investigations in Peterborough, Ontario with Fleming College. Fantastic course. Do not regret that whatsoever. Your professors really sort of lead how the course develops. And on top of that, if you're really lucky and your teachers like you, some of them even offer you jobs after you leave the program. I've seen a couple jobs available with some of my ex-professors. Unfortunately for me, they're in areas of security that I don't particularly have an interest with. But, you can go work for Walmart Corporation as a loss prevention officer, or a job opportunity that I did see was actually working for Walmart Corporation, working in their logistics department. That's a security job. But one of the things that my course taught me was the theory of modern security, and that's something I try to strive for every single day. And that's the idea that health and safety and security are the same thing. And when you really think about it, probably 80%, let's say 80% of your security job is actually a health and safety thing. So if your organization has a health and safety department separate from your security department, you can actually start promoting health and safety. And who knows, you actually might save your company some money at the end of the day by combining the security and health and safety department and running a much more organized operation. And why does that matter? Well, you're doing your patrol. You have to do a patrol of your building for access control and site integrity. Well, you know what? You're doing a patrol of the building and you notice there's a pipe that's bursted because it's so cold in the winter and it's a water pipe. That's a health and safety factor. And guess what? It's security that discovered it. So if you know who to call, boom, you're doing a health and security thing right away. Accident investigation, emergency response. These are all security jobs that I have done. And in some cases, with some companies I've worked for, especially companies that are closing down, they can close off their health and safety people, but guess what? Security's still there doing the health and safety job. It's sort of ironic. So I am a proponent for the health and safety modern security theory, and a lot of companies have yet to sort of catch on to that new theory. It's something that a lot of the different groups, a lot of the different schools, they're working on changing. But I've had a chance to talk to some of the other graduates of the other programs. I think there's one at Humber College and Loyalist. I could be wrong on that, but these 2 colleges have their own courses with their own teachers who aren't the same kind of security people from the Peterborough College, and their courses were totally different sounding. They had entertainment security in mind. The head of the Hamilton Tiger Cats is one of those professors, and you're like, wow, that's amazing, because if you've ever had a chance to work for security for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, it's really interesting because it's kind of intense in its own way. But moving on, I want to talk about this specifically. These guys, ASIS International. It's kind of an unfortunate name because if you slur like I do sometimes, it sort of sounds like ISIS. And you're like, But it's American Society for Industrial Security. This is a worldwide association. But one of the recommendations is that you go and get a membership from these guys, and then you also buy their books. And so what you do is you buy their books, you learn from their books, you do the seminars, and then you go get an accreditation test. Well, those accreditation tests are good worldwide. You can go work in Saudi Arabia, you can work in Russia, Finland. And at the end of the day, all those countries and all their different regulations and what they're looking for, well, they can go back to the ASIS International standard and say, hey, this meets all of our standards, and so they know you're good. It's basically a way of this group looking at who you are and what you've done, and they're saying, hey, this is the standard that everyone else in the world's operating with, and you're good to go. On top of that, there's a lot of perks to ASIS. You get to network with other experts. You get to see job boards. You can be qualified to work in the United States. And as a Canadian, that's a big deal because the United States isn't that far. Quite a bit of the major Canadian cities aren't too far from the American border. Theoretically, you could work in the United States, especially if you like to travel. So that's an option. Security is, for me, really, really interesting. I'm not going to talk about my specific job and who I work for because I don't have the permission and I don't want to upset them. But what I will say is it took a while for me to work through the things that weren't all that fun and to find something I really like. And where I'm working now, I feel like I'm part of a larger community, and I find that's really rewarding for me because I learned the hard way, especially in my 20s, that I needed to be doing something where I felt like I was accomplishing something, that I felt there was some value in what I was doing. And when I discharged from the Army, it took me a couple of years to even appreciate that I was part of something bigger than myself, that I had contributed, because I didn't get to go to Afghanistan, and that really bothered me because I really wanted to go. I volunteered like 3 times to go. But in Canada, unlike the United States, and the regular forces, just because you wanted to go to Afghanistan didn't mean you got to go. There was just too many people who wanted to go. I know it's kind of weird for you guys who are like, what the heck do you want to go there for? It's an Army thing. Subject for another day. So anyways, I had to really learn that I did contribute. And again, I'll talk about that in a different video on how I contributed. But you find value in what you're doing. And once you know you're doing something where you find out there's value for whatever reason, whatever it is you think is valuable, that's a you thing. But once you have that, your job satisfaction goes up. You're happy to go to work. It's not a burden to go to work. If a shift comes up and you're like, hey, you want to come in and shift last minute? You're like, sure, why not? I don't mind. That's a good thing. And I have that currently where I work. I feel like I'm part of the community. I'm feeling like I'm developing a relationship with the community. And although I'm the junior guy where I work, I see a wealth of possibilities where I'm working. I see a future here. And there are positions you can move up to. They take a while to get to, but I feel like there's a chance for policy change. I feel like there's an ability to grow in this position, and I actually can see myself working the next 35 years for who I'm working for and retiring with these guys. I've not seen that before in any other of the big box companies I've ever worked for. So that's really interesting. At least I think that's interesting, and that's something that's kind of a big deal for me, because I've been looking for all sorts of jobs, and I've interviewed for all sorts of jobs. And that's one of the unfortunate things about the security industry, is that the management jobs, there's quite a few management jobs. In fact, a lot of businesses, a lot of industries will only have 2 or 3 people in their entire security department, even though they might have 1,000 people in their company. Their security department is very, very small. So to get a chance to work for one of these big organizations, there might only be one job. Well, guess what? 30,000 guys are looking for that job. Ex-police officers often end up in security. And it's sort of interesting because if you believe what your teachers tell you in the courses you take, they're starting to move away from the idea of, well, because you're a police officer, you're automatically a good security guard. Well, unfortunately, though, the way things are moving is that security is proactive, meaning we try to prevent a crime before it happens, whereas police officers are reactive. And so it's 2 totally different scenarios. But I regress. Very interesting. Security also has all sorts of other stuff. Crime prevention through environmental design. Really, really cool concept. Basically, it's like, how do we get you to change your attitudes without actually doing anything directly to you? So like changing the music at a convenience store from whatever's playing on the radio that's playing the latest greatest stuff to classical music. It's worked. Max Milk Corporation did that. They changed their music in one particular location. They actually got rid of a group of kids that would always hang out in their store, and the reason you'd think, well, why does that make any big of a difference, is because when there's 13 kids hanging out at the front door of your business, a lot of people don't want to come into the store because they feel intimidated by a gaggle of people hanging out at the front door. So they use something called crime prevention through environmental design to change the behavior of the group by changing the music. And it was such a subtle change that the people didn't realize they were doing it. Boom, you got something awesome. And that's a security related field. My personal favorite is security surveys, so integrity surveys, and I've done a few of these. I've written reports for a couple different clients, and it's basically assessing. It's like, if I were a bad guy, what would I do to break into this facility to steal something? Well, you write that down on a report and you submit it to the company. And for me, it's almost like a game. In fact, I'm working on one now for who I currently work for, and I'm hoping they're going to like it. But anyways, it's there's so many different things. Insurance investigators, that really, a lot of the basis of what those guys do comes from the security department. So there's so many different options, and you don't have to freak out if you took Police Foundations. Police Foundations teaches a lot of the same stuff that the security courses do. Excuse me. Mind you, that's more with an emphasis on about being a police officer. But at the end of the day, security guards and police officers still follow the same set of laws. Police officers get their powers of arrest and, frankly, all their police powers from the same place that security guards get their powers, and vice versa. They all come from one source. And so the training is not significantly different. It's just the different approaches and how you deal with things. So it's really interesting, and there's so many opportunities that can lead in so many directions. Really go for it. So I think that's pretty much it. So yeah, please like and subscribe, or if you don't like my videos whatsoever, tell me what's wrong with them, and I can change my content. And I'd really appreciate it, because I've yet to really have any traction. So anyways, you guys have a good night, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.